Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of a carbon fiber glowstone ring that we've added a copper stripe to. And if you missed the first video, there will be a link to that in the description that goes over things in very great detail. But for now, I'll just show you this very quick recap just to get you all caught up to speed with where we're at on the ring right now. So like I said, this video is going to be the inlaying of the ring, and we're going to jump right into that. And this is going to be a very informative and really technical inlay because we're using 3 very different materials. So to start off, I'm going to put a little bit of electric tape over my ring mandrel. This is to protect that nice finish that we've already put on it. And this will kind of mess up the accuracy of the mandrel, but that's okay. We're not doing anything like cutting with the lathe bit that'll give us any negative effects because of that. Now the first inlay material we're going to use is this amethyst. I want to get a nice range of sizes and shapes, as well as different colors. So some of them are a little bit more purple than the others, some are a bit more white, some are a bit more clear. So I want to have a good variety in there, and it's important to get the spacing how we want it, and so I'm doing it fairly random. I'm doing some really close to each other, some that have bigger spaces. If you make a ring for your first time, it's usually pretty difficult to do this. It's kind of frustrating because it should be so easy, but there's a lot of times if you're not paying attention, you'll make a ring and then the distance between all your inlay materials will almost be the exact same. And this is especially difficult if you've got kind of some OCD tendencies where you want it all to be even, but I really do think a more randomized pattern to it makes it look more organic, and that's the look that at least I'm going for. I want it to look like it's a natural material. And one thing you probably noticed, after I put each piece into the ring, I sprinkle some of our glow powder around it, and that's to give it some support. It'll absorb all of that CA adhesive, that way it won't go running everywhere. If I didn't do this, our inlay pieces would be sliding all over the place. So that's just to hold these all in place. And then for the meteorite, I use a very similar process. The pieces I use are a lot more flat than the amethyst, and so it's important to try to stand these up. And so using that glow powder to support the pieces is even more important here. So you do have to be a bit strategic there. And then I'm being careful not to cover up too much of the space because we still have one more inlay material to go, and I want to leave plenty of space for that. Okay, now I'm going to switch to our glow powder. And in the first video you saw how I mixed this. I started with a red uncolored glow powder. That just means it glows red, but it was white. And then we added some blue pigment to it. So it's blue in the day and then red during the night. And then once I've built up a layer or two of that, I put in some of the smaller meteorite pieces. That way they'll stick out of the ring and they won't just get buried by the glow powder. And then for the diamonds, they're actually pretty tricky, so I thought I'd sketch up for you guys how I do it, just to help you visualize things. So you can see I've sketched out the profile of a ring here. I know it's not perfect, but hopefully you all kind of get the idea. And then the first thing I'll do, you'll see we've already sprinkled down several layers of our blue glow powder. So that's what this first little scribble at the bottom is supposed to symbolize. And then you can see I'm just drawing this rough little circle here. That's the diamond. And then what we need to do is use a really thick CA adhesive and put a dab over that diamond. And it's important that the CA glue goes above the surface of the actual ring. That way if it gets covered in glow powder later, once we sand back down to it, there will still be a clear channel directly down to the diamond. That way it'll be perfectly visible. And you'll see in the video, this usually takes more than one dab. I put a dab down, I use accelerator to harden it, and then I'll put down another, and sometimes even a third or a fourth. But our whole goal is we want to have our diamond inlaid, and then we want nothing but clear up until the surface of the ring. And then once we get to that point, that's where we can pack the rest of this glow powder in however we want. Now it's time to inlay the diamonds, and so you'll see I put a piece of paper below me. That's to catch all of them because they are decently expensive. And then the way I go about inlaying them is I just put a thin, very thin layer of super glue all around the ring where I'd want the diamonds to fall. And there is a little bit of strategy as to where you'd want them to fall. You don't really want them to stick out of the ring. If they stick out just a little bit, that's fine, but they cause a lot of sanding problem. So you want them to be completely below the surface of the ring, and then we'll have a clear layer of the CA adhesive. That way you'll still be able to see them. And then at this point I take a pinch of the diamonds, and I've just got enough in my fingers that when I roll them back and forth that some diamonds drop out, and then I just try to rotate the ring carefully and then just evenly drop them all throughout the ring. And then once I'm done with that, I use some CA accelerator to set everything in place, and then I'll go through and inspect the placement of each of them, and if there's one that's sticking out too far, I'll just pluck that out. And then you'll see at this point we've got diamonds all over on the ring, but none of them are sticking out, and that's exactly what we want. Now it's time to cover the diamonds in our thick CA adhesive like I was saying earlier, so I'm just putting a dab down and then going all around the ring covering those, and then I'll harden it once we're done with that, and then I'll just repeat the process for a second layer, go through and inspect it, and if there's any that need a little bit more, I'll do a third, and so on. Now the only material that we still need to add is the glow powder, so I'm taking a medium CA adhesive and just going all over the ring, especially focusing on anywhere there's a low point, and then just sprinkling it all over everywhere. And you'll see I'm using a little bit of canned air to get rid of the excess glow powder. If there's too much of it, you can have some dry spots in the ring, so once you sand into it, it just kind of turns into dust. So that's the best way to avoid that, and you don't even need canned air, you can just blow on it. And then I'll let it harden a little bit. I'm spraying it with some of the CA adhesive, drying it off using a heat gun, and then we're ready to start sanding away. So I'm going to be using a really rough Dremel sandpaper bit. It's actually 60 grit. So I'm just doing some general sanding all over. I turn the lathe on at some points, just trying to sand it down, and then I do need to focus on some of the parts in particular, especially pieces like amethyst that's so hard that it doesn't want to sand away. That can create raised bumps on the ring, and so you need to focus on those. And it can be a little bit tricky at some points. You don't want to overheat anything, so if you're trying really hard to get rid of a big piece of amethyst, if you want to go faster, you need to use some sort of coolant. But eventually we get the whole thing sanded down, it's all flush, and you'll see the clear places where we have those diamonds, those kind of stick out, and so it looks like there's little spots where we have the diamonds. I definitely don't prefer that look, so what I did, it was off camera, is I took the Dremel and sanded down into them a little bit just to kind of even them out. Right now they kind of look like these perfect little circles, and I didn't want that, but I just tried to mess them up a little bit, make them look more natural. So I carved some holes into it. Some of them I filled in with clear, and then some of them I sprinkled some glow powder in. That way it's just kind of randomized. And then you'll see once we sand and polish this ring, they really won't even be nearly as noticeable. But right now when they're so obvious, we're able to make it look good at this point, and then once it's polished, it's not even noticeable at all. So that's the reason for that. There's certain things that you want to do in a certain order, and that's one of them. And then for the polishing of the ring, it's pretty standard. One thing we want to be careful of is the copper. It can actually kind of splinter and smear. The best way to avoid that is by not using old sandpaper, and especially on a Dremel. So you want to make sure you're replacing your Dremel sanding bits quite frequently. The whole goal is to cleanly remove that material. You don't want to grind it down into the carbon fiber or the inlay. And then after we're done with the Dremel, we switch over to the sandpaper, and then all of these materials are really standard to polish. We just start with our roughest sandpaper, that's the 220 grit, and then we work our way all the way up to about 1500. And now we're left with a ring that's the exact shape that we want. It's sanded up, it's really smooth, but we haven't polished it using the buffing wheel, and it's gonna really transform the look of it. Right now it's kind of matte and the colors are kind of a little bit weird, but you'll see the way it transforms. But before we do that, I want to do some finishing touches on the inside of the ring, and it would make no sense to polish the outside, only to clamp it back in our lathe jaws, and then we'll have to polish it again. So we'll do that once we're done here. But you'll notice I wrapped the whole ring in electric tape, and I still want to protect it as much as I can. I don't want any physical dents in here. It's okay if there's a little scratch, because that'll totally polish away. And so I'm just carefully putting it in here. You'll see I put a teeny little dab of super glue, because I don't want this to slip in here, because I don't have it cranked down very tight. And then all I'm doing in this step is just rounding out the inside of this ring. It's going to make it a lot more comfortable to wear. And so the steps for that, they're all standard. I'm just rounding those edges and polishing the entire thing. And you'll see I use these two different paper towels. They both have a different polish on them. So it's going to polish the ring to a really high finish on the inside. And then now we're ready to do the outside of the ring, and this ring will be done. and we'll be using the same polishes, but we'll be using a polishing wheel. That just gives us a little bit better results, and it's faster than doing the inside. The only reason we don't use this on the inside is because we physically can't. So I'm starting on the left. This is the white polish. This gets everything really smooth, but it doesn't give us a mirror reflective finish, and so I just really thoroughly sand every single surface that I can of the ring, and then we switch over to the green wheel, and that's a really high polish. And you can see just how much better this ring looks. If you go back and compare it to when it was just done with sanding but not polishing, and now, it just looks so much better. So although this may seem like kind of a minor step, it's actually really important. So now that we're done with the ring, all that I have left to do now is take some interesting photos of it. And this is an interesting ring to photograph because it's different colors depending on if it's in a dark or a light environment. So I hope you enjoy these photos. But anyways guys, that's going to be it for this video. This was a really fun ring to make. It was a really cool project, and I hope you guys enjoyed following along for both parts of the video. If you have any feedback for me, be sure to leave it down in the comments. I'm very interested to see what you guys think of this style of video. Like I've said before, I don't think I'll be doing this for most of my videos. This might be something I do every once in a while, or it might be something that I post on a different platform like Patreon, for example. There's actually two different things about this video. It was a two-part video, and it was also a really technical video. So thank you so much for watching. If you want to buy a ring like this, you can go to my ring website. It's patrickadairdesigns.com, and if you're interested in making rings, you go to patrickadairsupplies.com. Alright, and for the very few of you who actually stayed this long in the video, I've got a secret surprise for you. I'm going to do an Amazon gift card giveaway, so all you need to do to enter is go to my Instagram, follow me, and comment on my most recent post, I heart rolled gold pretzels. The winner will get a $20 Amazon gift card, and I will select the winner in about 3 days.